So I want to tell you the tale of two different clients who had very similar, well, I don't know about very similar, but had similar experiences. One was the first client who had been my client for some time. And she calls me up one day and she's crying her eyes out. And it seems like her husband had died the year before. Now, her husband had also been a client of mine, so I knew him very well. And what happened was she was having a family get-together, a family reunion the next day at her house. And she had asked her husband to mow the lawn. They had a big side lawn, and she had asked her husband to mow the lawn. And it was getting dark outside and he hadn't done it yet. And she called and basically reamed him out, right? Like, why didn't this get done? People are coming. She's stressed about the next day. She had reason to do it, but he hadn't done it yet. So he goes out and starts mowing the lawn at night. It's too dark really to be doing it now. And he flips the tractor over on himself and dies. And you can imagine what that looked like. So she comes home late that night and is looking for him everywhere, sees the lights from the mower out in the yard, goes out and finds him dead and in not very good condition, as you can imagine. So she calls me the very next day and we get to work. So she had, first of all of the trauma over losing her husband, then the trauma of having found him in that situation, and then the guilt of feeling like it was her fault. And, then on top of it, she had a young son who adored his dad, and they had a lot to do to help him recover as well. So she felt guilt about taking the father away from the son on top of it. So we got to work right away. And as you can imagine, this was not a one-off session. We did many sessions until we got her to a place where she was able to move on with her life. After she came for a while, I didn't see her anymore. And, that's okay. It's common in EFT. People get well really fast. You don't hear from them. And so then I was out at a party one night and I ran into her, and it was maybe a year later. And she was like, oh God, like, thank you so much. Thank you. But the important thing was that a year later, she had already met someone. And she had been very much in love with her first husband. So to some people, this might feel like some kind of a betrayal, but she was so healed that she could actually move on. And she had met someone and was about to remarry 1 year later, and her son was thriving and doing well. Now, the same client had referred to me another client, another woman who had been through something equally devastating. She had been engaged to a man, and they were to be married very shortly. I don't remember the time frame, but very shortly. And she had, on top of that, given her life savings to put into his bank account, and they were using that to pay for the wedding. He goes on a charity ride on his motorcycle, raising money for cancer, I believe. And when he's on that trip, he has an accident and is beheaded. So they call her, and she is in the position where she has to go actually identify the body, which to me is just like beyond comprehension. So after that, she collapses. The money had gone to his ex-wife because they were not technically married. She inherited all of her money, all of my client's money, which caused all this resentment, but she could never move past it. So she moved in with her exes, or with her fiance's parents lived in their basement for many years. And she was not able to work, was living with constant anxiety and trauma, and could not get over it for years. So the first client referred her to me. She came in, we did a tapping session. We did just one tapping session. And she had like amazing progress in one session, and I was really expecting to see her again, but she didn't come back. So for me as a practitioner, that's like, oh God, like I really thought we were making progress. This was good. And then I didn't hear from her for again, right? Until one day I was in a 7-Eleven and I ran into her, and she came up to me and she was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my God. And I was like, well, what happened? Why didn't you come back? And she said, I didn't need to. I went home. I processed things for a little bit. And then I got a job. I moved out of the basement. I got on with my life. I have a new person in my life. And she said, and I have you to thank, which I think she has EFT to thank. And I just happen to be the purveyor of that. But it was amazing to me that she had been locked in that trauma for years, locked in it. And in one session, we were able to help her to move on. Whereas the first client, you know, she was in the middle of it. It was like there had been no processing done, nothing. And we were able to get her done, I don't know, maybe 10 sessions. And she was able to move on with her life in 1 year, right? Maybe less. I think probably a few months, she was actually moving on with her life and working again and on to, you know, it doesn't mean she doesn't love her husband. It doesn't mean the second woman didn't love their fiance. It just means that their life still had value in this world, and they were able to move on and continue living their own lives while honoring the memories of those who had passed, they had loved. So to me, you know, like that's the power of EFT. There are so many people who never move on. You know, they lose a loved one, something tragic, terrible happens, and they stayed locked in that trauma for their entire lives. And so, yeah, if that's you, I hope you don't stay locked. I hope you get an EFT practitioner and get your life back.